Every moment in this intense operation is shaped by speed, strategy, and razor-sharp precision. What follows are real-time scenes capturing the efforts of skilled professionals working to control the wild boar population. These are not staged reenactments. There are no second takes, no rehearsals, only unfiltered action in the field, where seasoned teams face off against highly adaptive animals in a delicate ecological balance. Our journey begins in the rugged Pindus Mountains, a region marked by thick forests, steep ridges, and a layered ecosystem that provides ideal shelter for wild boars. In the early hours of the morning, a group sets out through the dense fog, accompanied by expertly trained tracking dogs. Their mission: to locate and intercept a well-known herd of boars that has earned a reputation for moving quietly and slowly through the undergrowth. After nearly 30 minutes of stillness in sub-zero temperatures, a large figure suddenly emerged from the brush. A swift and coordinated response followed, ending with a clean and controlled takedown. But this was far from the end. In another section of the range, a second team was scanning the slopes, their movements silent and deliberate. The tension in the air was palpable. Then, in the distance, a dark figure slowly revealed itself. A carefully staged ambush was executed flawlessly, and a single, well-placed shot brought the animal down gently on the forest floor. When conditions on the ground make traditional methods difficult, aerial surveillance becomes a vital tool. As night approached over the plains of Texas, a team of helicopter pilots took to the skies, searching for wild boars that had been wreaking havoc on local farmland. Flying low over the terrain, the aircraft provided the shooter with an optimal angle to observe and engage. Multiple targets were identified, and a series of carefully controlled shots helped to restore order to the landscape below. From Texas, the operation shifted to the mountainous terrain of Corsica. Another team moved through the island's dense underbrush and challenging slopes. As one hunter reached a vantage point overlooking a hillside, they spotted rustling in the grass, revealing a wild boar searching for food. Within moments, the threat was neutralized with a precisely timed shot. After that, the operation proceeded to the hills of Gorski Kotor, which are covered in trees and have uneven ground, creating a natural labyrinthine structure. Tracking dogs led their handlers along tight pathways, until the dog's barking alerted them to the presence of a boar in the vicinity. Immediately as the animal emerged from its hiding place at a rapid pace, the hunter reacted. Similar actions were taken in the woodlands of Mississippi, where wild boars had caused significant damage to agricultural land and constituted a threat to the state's biosecurity due to the diseases that they are capable of transmitting to cattle. Active fieldwork was carried out by trained teams, which were responsible for recognizing indications and responding promptly to each emergence. Not only was the mission necessary for the protection of the land, but it was also an imperative precaution to take for the public's health. While each squad was moving to their designated spots, they were aware that the animals could show up at any moment. Following an extended period of calm, the sound of barking provided conclusive evidence that a wild boar was there in the close vicinity. It was possible to monitor the animal as it traveled through the foliage, intercept it, and then eliminate it with a shot that was sharply focused. After some time had passed, the teams worked their way farther up the slope, once more being led by the barking of dogs. As a result of the terrain, the animals were compelled to move frequently into the open. Rapid and accurate responses were given in reaction to each and every presentation. An area of the crew was responsible for blocking escape routes, which ensured that the environment was under control. In another part of the forest, there was a single tracker who traveled through the forest on their own. Sounds in the distance gave the impression that movement was becoming closer. When the numbers were brought into focus, an immediate and correct response was the next thing that happened. We were successful in securing another target. It is well known that these animals are intelligent and able to adapt to their environment. This is the reason why there is a high level of operational discipline throughout each and every stage of the hunt. The sound of rustling in the vicinity brought to light an additional opportunity. The only thing that was required was a fleeting appearance of visibility. After taking the shot, it was determined that the attempt was successful. Even as the sun began to set, the wild boars were meticulously followed as they made their final movements. Groups maintained their vigilance. A silhouette that was recognizable emerged from the darkness. The efforts of the evening were finished off with a final shot. The hunting of wild boars is not merely a question of recreational interest. Rather, it is an essential component in the management of invasive populations, the preservation of agricultural land, and the protection of communities from the vulnerabilities that these animals provide. In regions such as Florida, where there are no hiding spots and open fields are the only available option, monitoring becomes even more important. Here, attempts are still being made to maintain a balance between the influence of human activities and the impact of wildlife. When wild boar populations continue to grow unchecked in certain areas, it becomes an extremely important duty to manage the damage they cause. These creatures, who are well known for their power and intelligence, have the potential to do extensive damage to agricultural land if they are not managed properly. Over the course of recent operations, concerted efforts have demonstrated how determined and resilient wild boars can be. An instantaneous reaction was carried out in response to a quick burst of movement that occurred as hunting teams went into the field. Wild boars, which were frightened by the sound of activity, started running away in a variety of different directions. It was not an easy task to accomplish. When they are put under strain, certain wild boars exhibit protective behavior, leading them to periodically charge in a panic, which poses a threat to the field crews. The behavior of a mature adult who weighs more than 300 pounds might be particularly unpredictable when they are trapped. An occurrence occurred in which a herd of wild boars charged across a field that had been planted, causing damage to rows of crops as well as infrastructure. Corn stalks were broken, water tanks were destroyed, and irrigation systems were harmed as a result of their actions. As a result of their force, iron barriers were bent around. However, these were not only acts of survival. Rather, they were indications of a rising issue that required an immediate reaction. The boars were first able to avoid detection because they were concealed within the rows of crops. On the other hand, once the harvesting equipment had passed through, their hiding places were permanently removed. The animals were coerced into the open air and rushed toward the adjacent brush, only to be confronted by a control team that was waiting for them. While in a secure location, one member of the team took aim and responded with precision, thereby minimizing the amount of suffering that occurred. The effects of the devastation was visible in a vineyard that was located nearby. Dogs who had been trained to hunt swiftly notified their owners to any movement that was in the vicinity. There was a sudden appearance of a giant wild boar, and without any hesitation, it was safely and cleanly captured. During yet another close encounter, a boar that was startled boar made an attempt to escape. It was eventually found close to the edge of the field, despite the fact that initial efforts may have been made to avoid confrontation. Despite the fact that it had developed into a charge, the crew reacted quickly, ensuring that everyone involved remained safe. The operations continued in a variety of zones continuously. In order to keep an eye out for any suspicious activity, crews employed motorcycles to patrol open green fields. An urgent response was made by the crew once it was discovered that a wild boar was approaching the crops. The investigation continued to be concentrated despite the fact that the early attempts were unsuccessful. Control of the situation was achieved through the application of a precise action at close range. After making their way back to the cornfields with the assistance of dogs that had been trained, the crew rapidly discovered indications of new activity. In less than 5 minutes, the presence of a close target was indicated by the loud barking of the dog. Visibility began to decrease at the time when one member of the team moved into position. While moving cautiously along the border of the field, the hunt continued. It wasn't long before movement was observed once more. An observation was made of a wild boar making an attempt to cross into another field. A single, concentrated action was all that was required to put a stop to it. Each intervention that is successful contributes to a greater goal, which is to assist in the preservation of agricultural lands, the preservation of ecological balance, and the reduction of the risk of additional damage. Despite the fact that wild boars are often found in many areas, they are growing more and more aggressive. They have been seen entering residential areas, tearing through fields, and having an effect on both rural residents and the ecosystems of the surrounding area, according to reports. It is often necessary for teams to journey into the most challenging terrain in order to restrict their spread. This includes swamplands, which are the places where these animals mate and establish groups. During one of these efforts, crews transported themselves into a swamp that was near to an agricultural home using an airboat. They kept their concentration while navigating the swamp areas. At a certain moment, a wild boar was observed, and within a few seconds, a humane and clean step was done to deal with the situation. Shortly after that, another boar made an attempt to escape after being scared by the sound of the boat that was rapidly approaching. The team was unable to see it even while it was moving at full speed. As a result of the abundant food supply provided by the marsh, wild boars have flourished in these places, making them essential zones for the continuous management of the species. After only a few minutes, another one was observed coming into public view. One member of the crew was able to maintain equilibrium and successfully complete the mission, despite the fact that the boat was moving constantly and the terrain was very dense. In a short amount of time after that, the animal was discovered sleeping gently lying in the grass. The operation continued the following day in a mountainous region that was covered in a thick layer of trees. By use of binoculars, it was possible to identify a herd that was eating on the ground below. Quietly, the squad moved closer, selecting positions that would be most advantageous. There was an obvious opportunity that presented itself a few moments later, and the first boar was successfully captured. One of the other members of the squad, who was located further into the marsh, moved closer to a different target while taking cautious moves to improve their accuracy. Two subsequent actions, each of which was successful, were precisely timed. The mere lowering of the population is not the exclusive focus of these initiatives. As a component of a more comprehensive conservation and agricultural protection strategy, they are included. In spite of the fact that wild boars are a natural component of many ecosystems, they can be problematic when their populations reach levels that are not sustainable. All of these initiatives contribute to the preservation of the equilibrium that exists between human activity and natural ecosystems by means of coordinated planning, professional training, and care for wildlife respectively.